It's taken longer than it should have, Schalk, for us to get together. But I'm with Schalk Fourie, a former warrant officer in Recce, who served north of the Limpopo for a period of time, and spent a lot of time in the South African military. Schalk's also an author. He wrote a book titled Sierra Whiskey, which I haven't read, Schalk, but I'll certainly look forward to getting to it. But welcome, and thanks for your time.
Morning, Hannes. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity. It's great to talk to old brothers in arms, because we fought together there in your country.
Yeah.
It's an excellent opportunity for me, and I maybe jumped the gun a little bit, but I think our exposure fighting together there with your guys was actually the foundation for preparing us for the Bush War. Especially we were youngsters, we went there. I can maybe go just a little bit back, but Hannes, I want to mention the incident again about the guy that invited us there, because I hope he's listening to this video.
Let's get it. Yeah. Get that out there, and I hope that you find it.
Yeah,
just tell us what happened.
1991, this guy invited us to his father's farm in Rhodesia. I can't remember exactly where it was, and we were about eight people, 4 ladies, 4 guys, all working for SA Communication Service. And they started a preparation for us, the biltong, the braai, everything, to stay there for a week, I think 2 weeks. And then one of our directors said, no, it's a land of turmoil, you can't go there, and he override me. And we never pitched on that appointment. He must be in his 50s, Afrikaans-speaking guy.
Do you know roughly where he was farming, and how did he get hold of you guys? Why did he?
It was in the southern part. Yeah, one of the ladies that's also employee from SA Communication Service, that was a government department. She was born and bred in Rhodesia, and she knew him quite well. I maybe get hold of her somewhere, but maybe you'll pick up this video. But I'm inviting him to Namibia to come there for a holiday with his family. He's probably got a family by now to make up for that.
But you say he was farming in the southern part of Zimbabwe somewhere.
Yeah. He must be somewhere in his mid-50s, Afrikaans-speaking guy. And they had this lovely holiday planned for us there. And then, yeah, unfortunately, I was override, but we never went.
Schalk, let's go back to the beginning now. Where were you born? Your life before the military?
Yes, I was born and bred in Namibia, West Africa. Okay, Namibia is actually a beautiful name, based on the desert there, the Namib Desert, the oldest desert in the world. I was born there, and I finished matric there, and we were all called up. Just a little bit back, I just want to go from my ancestors.
Yes.
That came from the Cape Province in the 18th century. Okay, they came all the way up from the Cape Province, and they came into the southern part of Namibia.
Wow.
And at that stage, there were a war between the Germany and, well, most of the tribes. The Hererus, the Damaras.
Yes.
Which was that tribe? Hendrik Witbooi.
Hererus.
Hendrik Witbooi, Damara, yeah. So they came from the southern part. It was there close to Stampriet, that area, Keetmanshoop. Yeah. And they bumped into Hendrik Witbooi. And he had quite a lot of armed soldiers fighting against the Germans. And he stopped these farmers, and he said, listen, you can go through this part of the country, but we need your weapons, because we need weapons to fight against the Germans, which they did. They gave him the weapons. Directly after that, they start killing them. They shot about everyone except the women. They grabbed my grandpa. My great-great-grandmother was holding him in her arms.
The Germans grabbed him.
No, Hendrik Witbooi.
Let's explain that. Hendrik Witbooi was leading the Damaras. He was leading the insurrection against the Germans.
Yeah, it was the Damara tribe, yeah.
Okay, so your family got involved in helping them against the Germans, or the Germans?
Not really. Not at all. They were just on their way north to the northern part of Namibia.
I see.
Closer to Angola, yeah.
Yes.
And they just, that part on the route through the southern part, Kalahari of Namibia, they had to go through Hendrik Witboy's property, which he thinks is property, yeah. And at that stage, they were fighting the Germans.
Yes.
Then that group handed their weapons over, naive, and then they immediately start killing them. They killed most of the children. They didn't kill the women. They shot my great-great-grandfather, Hendrik Reinhard Fourie, and they grabbed my grandfather out of the arms of my great-great-grandmother with the idea to hit him against a tree to kill him, and he started crying, and they gave him back. Ooh. And that, luckily for that, that's why I'm here today. And then the Germans came 2 days later, and they found the bodies there, and they put them all into ground. And I've got a photo. It's actually in my book of the grave. On the grave, it's written in Netherlands, Hollands, Vermoeren, and then the date in 1903, and then the name of my grandfather, one of the other guys that was killed. Then, luckily, fortunately, the Germans did a follow-up, get the tracks, and they followed up, and they wiped most of the tribes. They wiped out, including Hendrik Witboy. He was wounded, and he died. Wow. And his last words were, "We should have never got into this war, but it was too late for him." They were wiped out, and I'm glad about that.
Well, that's an interesting, very interesting bit of history. I'm just trying to remember who the German commander was, the military commander. It escapes me at the moment, but the German, and he's obviously taken a lot of criticism in history for the action that was taken against Hendrik Witboy. But now, you hear the other side of the story. There was two sides to a story.
Yeah, it was Namibia, that state was still Zuid-West Africa, was colonized as the Pommies did with most of the countries. I'm not sure why they were interested in Namibia. I think maybe because they used the harbors. I've got no other idea, because at that state there weren't really minerals except diamonds, maybe.
It was just it was part of the whole scramble for Africa, and everybody was just grabbing what they
and then they fought the Herreros, and the Herreros were about 18,000, close to 20,000, and they wiped them out till about 7,000. There was only 7,000 left of them. And only recently, but I think about 2 years back, Germany compensated the Herreros for that.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's correct.
But that let me think, the Pommies owe us, the South Africans, quite a lot for the concentration camp. They wiped out the whole generation here with the concentration camp, but that's another story.
That's another story. You're right. We got a lot to talk about. My family have also got a bit of a history around the concentration camps and one thing and another. But let's get back to, so you were born, went to school in what was then Southwest Africa.
Yes, I grew up on a farm my whole life, so I was in hostel. So I saw my parents about 3 times a year. It was only the holidays, So that was like a good preparation for the army.
Yes.
And then comes standard 9. What do you call it nowadays? Grade 11. You get called up. All the Namibian youngsters from age 17 and 18 got called up. And then everybody got a paper, said, you are called up to this unit in South Africa, but I didn't get a paper. So I took one of my friends' call-up instructions, and I said, here's a postal address, and I've written a letter in Afrikaans, which actually sounds like this. Oom, ek is nie opgeroep nie. Ek wil ook weermag toe gaan. And 2.5 weeks later, here arrived my call-up instructions to one special service battalion in Bloemfontein. And the history behind that battalion is what all the non-trainable, untrainable youngsters were sent there.
Really? That
was before me.
What had you done to deserve that? So,
but at that stage, they started specializing in light armor.
Okay.
There was the Eland 60, the Eland 90.
Okay.
Started from there. Then later they had rifles, and then later they had the very, very famous Rhodesian armored vehicle. We were just too late for the war. Okay, then I was called up. I ended up there. You get one STB, you get School of Armor, and then you get one parachute battalion. And there was no love lost between the three battalions. There was always a fighting going on. And then your 3 months training in South Africa, doesn't matter where you are, is exactly the same. You could be in parachute battalion, one STB, the training is exactly the same. And then nearly just before the end of the 3rd month of basic training, Special Forces arrived. So they were the only unit, what they call it, unit, that was allowed to recruit right through the country. And they arrived there. And they said, okay, everybody interested, they can go to the movie hall. We were about 400, and they showed us this nice video of, I think it was Taffy Pelzer, sitting in a beach bucky with his beret, and next to him a blonde girl, and she was rubbing his wings, and everybody thought, wow, this is it. You must go for it. And then they said, okay, go and get your tackies and your R1. We will meet you on the rugby field. And of the 400, I think 30 arrived. 30. And they did the test on us, and they selected only 2 of us, myself and Spakbuta. That was the only 2 they selected. And from there we went to Porch, 3 side, I think. Now they sent all the recruits there. We were about, I think, 400, around there, 300-400, coming and going. And that was pre-selection. And from there they sent us to election. I think we were 90 left. And of that 90, 20 qualified
so tell us
to become
about
operators.
Where were you sent for your selections, and just tell us a bit about the actual selection course.
Yeah, that was in KwaZulu-Natal, very close to the Jusini Dam, that area. But what they did beforehand, they sent out a news clip on all the local radio stations there. Of course, it's predominantly Zulu language, telling them in their own language, there will be guys walking around here with uniforms. Don't give them any food, any water. And that's exactly what they did. You ask them for anything, they just walk away from you. And
so what did the selection involve, Schalk? Just talk us through the selection.
Every day they will select a new team leader. We were divided into teams. I think we were about six in a team. Only 6. And then every day they will select a new team leader, and they will give you a new task. They would say one of the tasks was, take these poles, this trees that was just chopped, so they were heavy. Take this pole, walk until you can't walk anymore. That was on a compass bearing. And we walked and we walked and we walked day in, day out. And then we hit the sea. So there they were waiting there, but we got lost, so we had to walk up and down. Eventually, we found the instructors. Then they would, what was the one? They let us jump into the Jusini Dam with your big pack rucksack, top of your head. Now, there's a lot of crocodiles there. So they would, beforehand, I think they threw a couple of hand grenades in there, fire a couple of shots, and then they chased us in there. At one stage, I got the impression that they don't really know what to do with us because we were massacred. They were annoyed about that. They think you can't be that many that's going to make our selection. So they kept on pushing us. I think we carried on for longer than it was planned. In total, we walked about 800 kilometers, 3 weeks, and every time they got something new that they would chuck in. One of the tricks they pulled on us, they said, okay, make a list in your team what you really want. Coke, bread, anything. Everybody wanted bread and Coke. And they said, just attach the money to that. Come at nighttime, they're having a nice braai and beer with our money and nothing else. And then a couple of days later, they said, it looks like most of you guys are missing bread. It's your fortunate day. There's a couple of loaves of bread there. Help yourself. Just we grab it, and as you bite it, it was filled with petrol. Then So every day they chucked in something new. That wasn't part of the initial planned election. Of course, there were guys. It wasn't only our group from one side. There were guys that fell off from the previous election, and then they were all the permanent force guys also that joined up with us. And then there were guys from England. There's a Jock Gow. There was a Major Schofield.
Yes. Schofield.
They all joined us there as well. So we were actually a bigger group than just 90.
Okay.
And then you start with your, after that you do signals, you do medics, you do a little bit Skype innovation, what else was there? Then your last, survival, that was after this. Then you, survival course, and then of course your parachute course, and then your last course, that's minor tactics. Minor tactics, from if you qualify there, then you're operational. Then they can use you. But even there were one or two guys that did finish minor tactics, but the instructors just decided they're not up to standard. So they, even finishing it, they still failed. So what's interesting about the survival course completely changed. We had a 3-week survival course. They changed it to 72 hours. But now much more research was done beforehand. So for instance, there would be 8 instructors, 4 senior operators, predominantly from one, and 4 psychologists. So all these guys will arrive there for election, but we all will be in civilians. So they've got no idea you have what you are. And then in the morning, we will call them together, divide them into teams, and say, okay, here's your task for the day, and it's printed on a clipboard. We'll give it to them, and then it will be carrying a drum all full of water from this point to the next RB point. And then they will look at you, and then later on, they start getting relaxed with you. They have no idea who you are. And then one or two guys that said, let's empty this drum. And then they empty it. And the last part that we did, we will let them walk individually. It was at night. They're close to Uheki. We had the training base there. So we said, there's a compass bearing. You're going to walk by yourself until the end of the route. And then we will wait for them, ambush them, blindfold them, put a bag over the head, and then we tie them onto a pole. And then we had a walk-in freezer there with ice cold water, and we'll pour that over their heads. That was the last part of the elections. They didn't know it. And you can't believe how many of the guys packed up there, right there. And for us, it was unbelievable. I mean, it wasn't that bad. But they were they heard we had 2 or 3 guys there talking Portuguese, so they had no idea who caught them and what was going to happen to them. And there's a couple of guys there that packed up there. And from the psychologist side, they were a little bit more strict than us. We would still say, yeah, this guy is fine. They would say, no, this guy is not small team material, because we always operate in small teams. He's going to let you down. And then at the end, we will sit together and we will take one student, and all 8 will give a report on that one student. And then one guy will present it, and it's a yes or a no. It's not an in-between. Yeah, so that was the new selection course, and that was put together by Dr. Wouter Basson, a brilliant guy. And I think it was based on the Israeli survival course.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
The fail rate or rate that passed was ironically exactly the same as the old selection, which was about between 5 and 7%.
So how many tactics the same? Passed out, Schalk? How many of you actually got your colours and passed out?
From our group that started in 77, 20 made it. 20 of the initial 400-500 made it.
Wow.
So yeah, so it's a pass rate of about 5 to 7%.
And then you were posted to one Recce.
Correct. We posted to one Recce. We finished we finished minor tactics when we had that very infamous operation Uheki, where 7 of our guys were killed, all older guys, our instructors. Fortunately for us, there weren't enough planes on the planes that left from Lubota Airport in Durban.
What actually happened? Just tell us what happened. How were they killed?
It was attacking a military base. Number one, we were not trained for that. Number one, that was never what we do reconnaissance. We don't attack bases. So one other stupid reason, I think it was Magnus Malan decided, use your best soldiers to go and attack a base. It was foolish, to put it bluntly.
Was this in Angola?
And that was in the southern part of Angola.
Okay.
I think the base was Uheki base. It was Swabu. And they were ducked in. They were ducked in with anti-aircraft weapons, 14.5, 12.7, 23 mil. I think some of the guys were killed by the 14.5 mil. So they dropped them off 25 k's too short, and they had to walk, carrying all that ammunition. I remember Kali.
Were they parachuted in?
Parachuted in, yeah.
Okay, now they've got to walk
Kali
25 k's.
Kali carried the LMG, had about 500 plus rounds on him, and he walked. They all were heavily loaded, and they walked right into the guys who were waiting for them. And I think 7 or 8 of our guys were killed. And one of the generals involved was Gleason, and there were a reunion afterwards about that. And he was invited, and he never went. He said he couldn't face the guys because it's a suicide mission. Yeah, and for instance, you had a parachute battalion, you got infantry. There was no artillery support, mortars, anything. Just walking to a base, full of Swabu that were waiting for you, heavily armed, and tried to take the base over, which they did in the end, but with a heavy loss.
Okay, Schalk, let's go back to you. So now you're in one recce. What is your first deployment?
Just to add on, I started specializing in demolitions, which was a good thing. I'll come to that a little bit later. Within 78, they called us together and they said, we're going to deploy somewhere, but we need to put on civilian clothes. And we left with 2 Dakotahs. No idea where we're going to go. In the air, they took out bags. Each guy's name was it, and they said, here's your bag, put on the clothes, and it was Rhodesian camouflage. And they said, from now on, you're going to be D Squadron from SAS, Rhodesian SAS. And we stayed D Squadron right till the end. You guys were C, and A and B was in England.
Yeah.
And they said, from now on, you have to speak English. Now, I'm from Namibia, I could only say is and ah. And one incident, we landed somewhere, I'm not sure where, driven by trucks to Mabalahuta.
Yes.
That's where our base camp was. Yeah, and somewhere along the road, we stopped to buy food, and there was a lady selling hamburgers. And I remember Charles Wallstorm, also from Namibia, he asked the lady, I want 3 hamburgers. She said, no, you have to pay for it. No, free. You couldn't pronounce it. She said, no, you pay for it. I said, no, I won't pay for it.
Yeah. So you get to Mabalahuta.
Yeah, that was our introduction.
So this is early 78, is it? That you now arrive in Mabalahuta?
The later part of 78, yeah.
Okay.
So we were deployed in Mabalahuta. I think it's on the far southern part of Rhodesia.
Yeah, southeast.
There's a river there as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I think it was a private game.
Yeah, the Lundi.
Yeah.
Lundi River was probably nearby, yeah.
Yeah, and there was an airstrip, but I believe it belonged to a game. It was a game farm.
You know who owned that game rights, I think, right? Was, you might remember, the South African pop group, 4 Jackson and Jill.
Yeah.
They owned that land. It was then ceded to the state. But yes, that was their property just near Mabalahuta, where you guys were based.
unbelievable.
Yeah.
We called it the place of ants. We slept on stretchers, and in the middle of the night, you will wake up and you hear this funny noises. They will climb up the stretcher. So eventually, we had to put grease on the foot of the stretchers to at least have a quite peaceful night's sleep.
Yeah.
I remember one incident while we were there. They suddenly called us all together and said, "You have to come and donate blood." What happened? There was a stick from SAS, no, ORI, in the area there, and they walked into a stick of, I'm not sure which section, of black Rhodesian soldiers. Yeah, and they hit the contact there, and own guys firing on each other, and there was a couple of guys wounded, and I think there were 2 guys killed from the black soldiers.
Okay.
And so we had to go donate blood. So that was a firefight, a heavy firefight between own forces. I'm not sure how that happened.
Okay.
And then we were briefed, we're going to deploy in the Russian front, now on the northern part of Mozambique. At that stage, I think the SAS were there and Zulu scouts. So they were drawn out, they were removed from there because they didn't want us to walk into each other.
Yeah, sure.
And we were there from 78, I think, for 3 years, 78, 79.
No, it wouldn't have been. You would have come out. You would have come out early 80. But Schalk, tell us about your first deployment into Mozambique down on the Russian front.
Yeah, the first deployment was a little bit of a disaster. I was in a team of Uheki de Toy. He's the brother of Wynand de Toy that was caught in Angola.
Okay. Yes.
At that stage, Wynand wasn't qualified yet. We were normally between 6 and 8 men teams, and we would deploy from Abalawita, from the airstrip there, always at night, and always with 2 Dakotas. Sometimes I think only 1. And so I would say 99% of our deployment were by parachute at night. I remember one night we were flying, we were stand up, hook up, the red light was already on. And the next moment, the Dakota just banged. And they picked up the Dakota. I think on the railway line, they had anti-aircraft guns. And they picked up the 2 Dakotas. And it banged, and it came back. And now we were completely off course. And I think they flew another 5 minutes, and then we only jumped out. What happened to me, my jettison device came loose. So when we jumped out, and normally you wait, when you release the jettison, you normally wait for that heavy pull because it was between 40 and 50 kilograms weight. You wait for that jerk on your harness, and I felt, and I said, nothing happened. And I looked down, said, my bag is gone. So it was loose, it loosened. And one of our guys, Dave Davis, got injured his ankle. And I took over his backpack, and I left him out the next day. What was interesting, every time we jumped in, and they said, no, you must hide your parachutes away and your reserve. And I think we normally jumped at about 800 feet, except from two incidents we jumped like, I think at 400 feet. And that was, both of them was base attacks with your guards. We jumped at, I think, 400 feet. So we lie up at night, and then every time, early in the morning, on a few occasions, we saw them coming past, and then they found our parachutes on their heads with the reserves, and walk past us, and then that same day, you will hit your first contact. So by now, they know exactly you are between 6 to 8 guys, and they will follow us all the way. Now, we were deployed in Rhodesian, that area.
Yes.
Malvania.
Yeah.
Mapai was we were close to Mapai as well. And we were, lots of time we were close to the railway line. We had a lot of ambushes there. Most of our contacts we initiated by claymores. We normally walk, we do a dog leg, come back, lie there very quiet, and 90% of our contacts were there. They would walk on your track. One morning I was lying there. Luckily our drills and training were excellent. And I heard a noise. I said, it's metal. There's nobody with metal outside our light-up place. And it must have been a barrel of one of the guys that hit a tree trunk. And I picked that up, and we normally shell like that for enemy. You guys probably as well. And the guy came so close to us, he walked behind the claymore, and he picked up the wire. And fortunately for us, he followed the wire towards the claymore. And as he was right next to the claymore, we initiated it, and we started the contact. Our first contact we had. No, sorry, that was our second one. Our first contact, we were knocking in what we call a scorpion formation. 2 scouts, and then the team leader, and then it would be a tail to the right or to the left. And we were walking in that formation, and I can remember it clearly. It was a trumpeted hornbill.
Yes.
You know, that shriek.
Yes.
And what we didn't realize is he picked us up and he picked the enemy up, and we walked slapping into each other. And I remember in my mind, I don't know why, I thought all the tours are black, completely black. And this guy across me was like a yellow mulatto color. And that 1 or 2 split seconds of hesitating nearly cost me my life. And then we opened fire, and one of our guys, Corporal Ganal was for his guy. He ran forward right into them and killed 1 or 2 of them, but they shot him through his head, and then they dispersed. They ran away. And we got eventually found Ganal and about 50 meters, 60 meters in front of us. We walked with him, I think, about 5 k's, and then the elevator came in and took the body out. A week later, and then we had 1 or 2 more contacts. A week later, we had quite a massive contact. And I was the signaler. I had that was a TR-48.
Yeah.
Later on, it became the Synchro 30. I was the signaler because I was the best in operating the Morse key. So here's a radio for you. It adds to your weight.
Yeah, that's right.
So I was always with Kokkie the Twee. And we hit this massive contact, and HQ said to us, go forward and do a head count of how many guys you killed. And I remember we stand up, Kokkie walked left, and I walked right around quite a big tree. And we walked about 2 or 3 steps, and then a wounded guy shot him right through here, through his arm, broke his arm, right through his lungs and heart. And he was killed instantly. And then we had another firefight. Well, it was only the one wounded guy. We killed him. And then we started escaping. Now we were only 6 guys. So we started to escape and evade. And they said, no, they can't come in that night or that day. They can only pick us up the next day. So we had to keep on walking until we found a high ground, laid up there. And the next morning early, they came in for Kokkie. So now we were only 6 guys left. And the other team not far from us was Schalk W, and I can't remember who, D W Fourie, and Swannies. They were in the other team. And Schalk, he went back to London because he was from there. And he also wrote a book about his experience. I think it was in the SAS, and his experience with the South African Army, which he rated high, very, very high. He said the best fighting force he was deployed with. And he said, their team could hear Kokkie's team hitting the one contact after the other contact after the other. So what they did is that if you 8 guys, they would put 20. If they hit you in the first contact, they will triple that or double that. So we were that, and they keep on our tracks. And meanwhile, we were there to lay landmines. We laid ambushes next to the railway line. One morning, we were lying next to the railway line, and we heard this noise coming down the railway track. And it was, I'm not sure what you call it. It's like a small truck. You pump it like this, and then it moves. And they came right into our ambush. And when we hit that first shot, the other guys go. But yeah, we killed all of them on that small, I'm not sure what you call it, what they use. I think they use it to inspect the railway line before the train will come.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Schalk, did you
and then we laid the ambush. There's a dirt road there. Yeah, there was a dirt road adjacent to the railway track. And it was our same team. There were the 6 guys. No, sorry. We went out, and normally we were deployed for a month. Then you stay 3 days, and then you deploy again. Normally 4 weeks up to 5 weeks in total. And we laid an ambush on the railway line, and we were too close to the dirt road. And me and Jakes Jacobs were at the back. We were covering the back, laid out our claymores, and the guys walked right into the ambush. And our guys opened fire, and one of the guys broke through our ambush. Now, me and Jakes are lying with our backs to the ambush. It was difficult not to look back what's happening. And as I turned around, I saw this guy coming right through the ambush. And he looked at us with his eyes was as big as this. And instead of shooting us, he took his AK and he threw me and Jakes with the AK. And he ran right past us. I mean, we afterwards tried to see his track, his footprints. You would find a footprint here and about 4 meters further, the next footprint. I mean, even initiated the claymore, but yeah, he outrun that little ball bearings as well. And what we didn't know, we were very, very close to a big base of what was that? No, that was the Mozambique army.
Frelimo.
Yeah, Frelimo, yes. And they opened up with mortars on us, and so we packed and we just took the gap there. What I told you before is I think the bush war for us, specifically 1 and 5 Recce, it was a very good introduction because we were all youngsters. A very, very good introduction experience, especially fighting with your guys, fighting in the bush there, because that we could later use specifically when we become instructors and deploying in Angola and other places to plow that back. One operation we did was a base attack with your guys. I think it was SAS. I'm not sure if there was Salute Scouts. And that was when we had that, I think it was about 400 foot, the height they dispatched us. Hit the ground, went through the base, it was empty. There was nobody there. It was actually only one guy, a militia guy with a G3 rifle. And as we walked, I saw the rifle standing against the tree. And I looked up and I saw him sitting very high up in the tree, looking at me down like that. And I showed him, I saw his hand, so I know he's got no weapons. I showed him, come down. And one of our guys, Gert Exterieur, from behind me, just shot the poor guy because we could have found out what's happening in the base, and he killed him. And then they picked us up and I said, no, they found the links, or the spotter plane found the base further away from us. So they picked us up with alloys and they dropped us off there. And then we started the real fight. We were sitting there just before we attacked. And there was a guy, Mac van der Merwe, big, strong guy, my senior. He said, Eswe, come sit here. He took out a small flask and he said, have a drink. And I think it was brandy or whiskey or something, but it immediately put you on a trip because you haven't drank anything for quite a while. And then we started fire. We saw what you call trenches right at the bottom, and we saw there was a guy standing there, a mulatto guy, and he was like telling forward here, back there. And then we initiated the contact, and we started a fire movement. And I remember Mac was about 2 meters in front of me, not a whole meter behind a tree. He was next to the tree. And he was looking to the other side. And that mulatto guy shot him right through the neck. And then we started fire movement right through the trenches. But I remember on top of us were the gunships, the Allies. And they would fire just before us. And that was nice to have, for the first time, to have fire support. We went right through the trenches. And I'm not sure how many guys we killed there. And then we weren't picked up. They said we have to walk out from there. I might have my facts wrong there. It was us and some of your SAS guys. Then I picked up the spotter plane, said these tanks, I think TR-48s, and they knew we were in the area, and then they start firing on us. Spot fire here, there, and I remember myself and Paul Courtney, we were lying behind a small tree like this, pushing us each other away. If that tree is going to help. And you could hear that if they fire, you can hear them opening the breech. You can hear that shell drop, clink, clink, clink in the tank. You can hear them, so close they were. Putting in the next shell and they would fire. It was the weirdest sound. It sounded like a plane coming over your head. But I didn't know exactly where we were. And I think between us and the SAS guys, we had one RPG. That's it. So we couldn't take the tanks off. And then they called in a hunter strike. I think he took out 1 or 2 of the tanks, and they said, "You guys must get out." And we walked. Now the whole bush were burning, and we start walking out, and we walked right past it. We could see their vehicles, but it was now getting dark. So we walked right past them into the high ground, and I think there was another strike, but it hit the SAS team, and I think one of your guys were killed there. Some of the other guys will probably know more detail about it. So that was that deployment. And then there were the Mapai attack. I think at the Mapai attack, that helicopter was shot down. There were about 12 Rhodesian guys in there, the pilot, the co-pilot, and the tech guy. What I believe happened, it was they were flying in to drop off the guys, and the first PMM helicopter sort of stalled in the air, and this one had to bang. And as you were banging in the air, it was shot from the bottom with an RPG, and it disintegrated. They were engineer guys, they said it was explosive, so it was completely disintegrated. Mm-hmm. Although there was a strike by, I think, by hunters to take out what was left of the wreck. We were getting ready, and we were quite a big group, I think about 25, to also get deployed in that same area, and they decided there's already too many guys in trouble. We keep your guys here. But we hit a contact there. They were looking for us, and I think there were about 20 of them. And they walked and slamming into us. And we did out of the book fire movement. And we killed all of them. One of them, or 2 of them ran away, and the other picked up Rocky from Black and another guy, and they snuck them out of the helicopter. So that whole bunch of them were wiped out there. Yeah, and I believe afterwards, some of the guys went into that site where the guys were killed, and I believe they were put in graves by the locals.
Yes.
And I would like to go there one day and just to see. And the chopper, there is a book up on that as well.
Yes, there is. Rich van Molson, I think, wrote it, ex-RLI officer. But yeah, they did a trip there, and they were Stan Standish White, I think, went along, a couple of the Air Force guys, and I gather they were very well received by the Mozambicans, who were very understanding and respectful, and they've kept the site where the crash, I think, is almost like sacred ground. They're very reverential and respectful of the fact that this was an unfortunate incident, and I know the guys that went there were very well treated by the authorities as well. So hats off to the Mozambicans for the way they've handled it all.
Yeah, that was great. The other deployment we had, I think it wasn't very long after one of the Viscounts was shot down, and then there was retaliation from your side, and we were involved. into Zambia. It is that famous video clip from, I think, Grim Mamba, the two hunters talking,
Yes.
pilots talking to each other.
Yeah.
And they caught the guys on the ground. And they bombed them under. I remember the conversation between them where they said, well, they could see that there was massive heat directly onto them. And I think a lot of them were recruits. And I'm not sure. I know we were involved there, although we didn't have any context there. And I can't remember what the Rhodesian guys had any context there. I think it was predominantly the airstrikes. And it was in Zambia. And it was I think the one pilot talked to the Zambian Air Force and said, we've got no quarrel with the Zambian army, but if you take off, we will shoot you down. Yeah, so that was very interesting.
And so where were you guys actually deployed, Schalk?
That specific operation. I'm not sure. But that was still a little bit vague. Maybe some of the other guys can remember. But I remember we were there to a base attack or something, or to be on standby if they do find them. But I think they were too deep deployed. So it was predominantly, according to me, airstrikes. And it was very successful, if I remember the conversation between the two pilots.
That's right. But most of your time was really in Mozambique. Yeah.
There was another group. I was one Recce Bravo group. Now, between 5, 1, and 4, one Recce Bravo group was the unit that was utilized the most. We deployed on about 8 months out of a year. And when you come back, normally it's training, or you would present training. Then we had an Alpha group in one Recce. We called them the Sky Guards. They were the guys that loved parachuting and free falling. I never did. And they were the guys that go to the show jumps at Ellis Park where the Springbok play rugby. So they missed a big part of the war. So Bravo group when Alpha group was also deployed. Was it the Kariba Dam? I think
could be
Kariba Lake or somewhere. Yeah. They were deployed there because I believe there was infiltration at night.
Yes,
the books coming over the river there.
That's right.
So they were deployed there, but I don't think they had much action except from going to the bars and meeting the girls. I don't know.
They did a sabotage where they blew up some boats at some stage on Kariba. But you're probably right. I don't think they probably had quite a good time at Caribbean Bay.
Yeah. There was one operation which I remember now. Also very close to the railway line. We were 2 teams together. I don't know why. And the 2 teams split up. This was at nighttime. So the one team went ahead to blow up pylons next to the railway line. And our team stayed behind. And they walked. I think there were 6 guys. And they walked and they took a rest right into the ambush area. The guys were lying on the other side. And the guys heard them. And the next moment they opened up. I'm not sure if it was Zebra or Frelimo. I think it was most probably Zebra.
Or Frelimo, yeah.
Or Frelimo. And on the side, we had a stage view from the side of the contact. And you could see, typically night fire, they fire too high. There's a lot of traces. And our guys scattered. Some of them left their big packs behind. So the next morning early, there was a Telstar up in the air, and they told us, line abreast, go to the contact area, go and find your buddies. And we walked. We were only 8 guys. And we could hear them talking. We could hear them going through the guys' backpacks. I think we must have been about 100, 200 meters away from them. And then they said, stand down. We found all the guys. You can go. And we made a U-turn. And as we walked, they picked up our tracks. And we walked into the saddlewood, thick saddlewood. We were lying on the outside of the saddlewood, and we saw them coming. Very, switch on. 8 guys ready, quiet. And we stopped counting how many of them was. And they followed our tracks right to the end of the saddlewood. And they made a U-turn, or not a U-turn, they walked around the bush on the other side. And as they walked around, we called in an airstrike with the hunters, and some of the links actually dropped on top of us. And the hunter pilot said, "Here's your chance. You have to take the gap now." And we were out of there. Yeah, so that was very fortunate. Nobody killed. All of us got out of there. And what was the other operation that was quite interesting?
But they were aggressive, Schalk.
Yeah. Because now they were tail in the air. We were running away, and they knew they can count the tracks. They were very good in tracking. Later on, they became more switched on because they realized if they follow our tracks, every time we hit them, and they could never. Ironically, in my 3 years there, we lost 4 guys, I remember. It was Moose Bieneke. I can't remember the other guy's name. That was before we arrived. And then during my deployment, we lost Kanao, and we lost Koki the Tway. Any Blau was wounded. There was a couple of other guys wounded, but we didn't lose another guy there, which I can't remember. But we picked up a lot of experience, and on average, we carried rucksacks, 40, 50 kilograms, mostly water. Myself, the radio, and then you would carry a chest with me, 3 magazines, your diagonal mirror, your helio mirror, diagonal panel, your helio mirror, compass would be on your chest with me. And then your kidney pouches would be a water bottle, survival kit, food,
explosives,
pistol, yeah, claymore. Claymore would be in your backpack. And then, what do you call that? We had a hacksaw, like a hacksaw. It was just a cable with 2 handles. So if you have to clean up a LZ, you just put it on a small tree and you use it like that. That was actually very effective. What was the other thing? Oh yeah, we were picked up one late afternoon by 2 LOHs. Flew again, same story. The anti-aircraft weapons picked us up in the air because now it was nearly dark, so they could see us clearly, and they opened up fire. I remember I was sitting on the door facing the railway tracks, and the next moment I saw the traces coming past. You could hear them going past the LOHs, and these 2 guys just bang, dropped down, right down. And they carried on, and all of a sudden they land into the bushes. The pilot and the co-pilot run to the other chopper, and the tech guy told us we're out of fuel. So we had to stay there the night, looking after the LO, and they came back early the next morning with fuel. It was FCAS after. I can't remember which one. They refuel and then took us out.
Schalk, how did it all end for you in Rhodesia? Do you remember the end when you got the news that it was over and you were being pulled out?
Yeah, I remember that must have been right in the end. We were at the bar, and that was the first time we actually met some of the Selous guys and some of the SAS guys. We were deployed, but we never saw each other. And there was an officer, I can't remember, SAS guy, Selous guy, he said, "Guys, come here." And we were 8 again. We were always 8 or 6, even drinking together, and they put all the glasses together. He took a bottle of red hot rum, took the lid off, poured that whole bottle into that 8 glasses, and just top it up a little bit with rum. And I remember that night, now I couldn't speak English at all. Now I was talking to you guys, trying to explain where we were, what we did, but I think in the end he didn't understand anything. But the next day, I was sick. Now we're flying back, and the pilot looked at me and he said, "Come and lie here, right behind my seat." He said, the plane is a little bit more stable there. And we landed in Messina, and I felt something burn here, my arm, and they're putting a drip up on them because they look at me and say, "This guy is not going to make it." Because you're not used to alcohol. We just came back. Yeah, and I still have my Rhodesian camis. Although we deployed in olive green, the Cuban green, Cuban green uniform. Hats, khaki boots, which weren't really built for. It was supposed to
anti-tracking,
make anti-tracking better, and would only last one deployment, and then you have to throw them away. And yeah, so that.
So it was only
that was for me. It was a very good experience, the deployment there.
But then
I went
when you got back to Messina, is that when they told you that it was over?
Yeah. Then they said we had another operation which we did together with your guys, and that was the Matola raid in Matola. In Maputo, we hit the 3 houses with ANC.
Yes.
I went there last year, October. I went past there. There's a massive memorial there in the Matola circle. They built a memorial. I took some photos, and we never knew exactly how many guys we killed. And I actually counted them there. There were 15. And strange, the last 2 names, it said captured, interrogated, executed. Now, I remember we caught 2 guys and we gave them to the police. So they must have, we never executed somebody. We never interrogated because we're not interested in what they had to say. Yeah, so that was there were 2 of your guys killed there, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
One guy stayed behind.
Yeah, that's right. Wayne Ross Smith, I think, was killed there. There were 2. There were 2 killed. Which listen, Schalk, can we carry on? I've got to end this now, but I want to talk to you more about this and then what came afterwards. But I just can't. I can't do it right now.
Okay.
So